Welcome everyone to Lunch with LeAnn. Today is Wednesday, February 17th. And if this is your first time joining us on Lunch with LeAnn, it is a weekly program that is hosted by Link, a center for independent living in Southwest Idaho. Our guests on Lunch with LeAnn join us every Wednesday to share some fun conversation around lunch, what access and independent living means to them, and most importantly, share some resources that may be helpful to you or even someone you know in living the life of your choosing. And we do all of this within the first 15 to 20 minutes of your lunch break. Today, we're excited to be continuing our series, Education to Action, as a part of the Consortium for Idahoans with Disabilities, Fred Rigger's awareness campaign around disability, and it launched last month. Today, we have on our show Kelly Buckland, who is an Idaho native and the executive director at NCIL, which is the National Council on Independent Living. So Kelly, thank you for joining us today. We're happy to have you here.
It's my pleasure. I'm very happy to be here. It's always a pleasure to talk to my friends in Idaho.
And we always love coming to DC to visit you. I also want to share that Jen Greshdale has joined us as a co-host. So Jen, thank you for joining us today. Welcome.
Of course.
And we have our ASL interpreter, Sierra, here. Thank you, Sierra, for joining us. We are having a few internet issues, so we have troubleshot that with having some co-hosts, and we're really excited to be here. So Kelly, would love to hear a little bit about what you're in Washington, D.C., so I know you've had your lunch already, but, what did you eat for lunch?
So not too exciting. I had a hot dog.
Oh, I think that's very exciting because there's a lot of follow-up questions I have about your hot dog. Ketchup and mustard and onions and relish, or what does your hot dog look like?
Just mustard.
That's
I
what
don't put ketchup on anything, not even French fries.
The Idaho man who doesn't put ketchup on French fries. You heard it here first.
No, I do fry sauce. That's what anybody from Idaho does. Fry sauce. Like they don't know what fry sauce is in DC, right? If you ask for fry sauce, they go, "What? What's that?"
Yeah, and how often do you get this, Kelly? We have mayo and ketchup. It's not fry sauce, though.
Well, then that's true. I guess there is ketchup in fry sauce, so I guess you could say I kind of put ketchup on my fries, but
it's an ingredient, right? But you don't actually put the ketchup. So Jen, you're joining us too. So I'd love to hear what you're having for lunch.
So after this interview, I'm going to make myself my favorite peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So it's all like local stuff with the bread lovers white bread with the honey roasted peanut butter from City Peanuts or City, whatever that place is downtown. And then this new strawberry freezer jam from Boise Berry Company. This stuff is the bomb.
I've never heard of that. I'm going to have to try it.
Yeah.
Where did you get
it? Through Reed's Dairy Home Delivery.
There it is. Reed's Dairy Home Delivery. You heard it here first. Maybe Jen will post their information in the link if you're in the Boise area. Well, I'm having some Brussels sprouts left over from my birthday dinner. And then I'm having a chickpea salad that is also left over. It's just, chickpeas. They're delicious, but they're hot and tangy to keep me going today. So that's my lunch, guys. Whew. And a salad. We all know I'm going to have a salad. So Kelly, we're so honored that you have joined us today. And we kind of, here at Link, we just kind of think of you as, a really legendary human in our world. So you're from Idaho. Can you maybe tell our viewers who may not know you a little bit about your background and history and how long you lived in Idaho?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. Well, I grew up in Rigby, Idaho. Well, actually, in a little town called Manan outside of Rigby. So Manan was actually 5 miles where I grew up, from where I grew up. So I grew up in the middle of nowhere, right? On a potato farm and a cattle ranch. So it was on what they call the Manan Buttes, which the Rick's College R used to be painted on one of them. And our farm actually sat right below that. And we actually owned the ground where the road goes up to the R, or where the R used to be. So that's where I grew up, was around there, around the Snake River. So grew up as a farm boy, a rancher, and when I was, whenever I wasn't working and it wasn't winter time, I was in the water, either in a river or a lake, or I loved swimming, loved the water. And so when I was 16, on my way, actually, our discussion a little earlier, was on my way up to Palisades Lake. There were some cliffs that we had scouted out up there that you could dive off of. And we had, I mean, I never dove off of them, jumped off, but they were really high. But on the way, we stopped into Idaho Falls and was jumping off the John Holt Bridge there. And I dove off the boat dock and broke my neck in the Snake River in July 26th, actually, of 1970. I spent about a year in rehab and then went back home, finished school. Actually went back to farming. I drove the swather. My dad rigged up some hand controls on the swather, and I went back to swathing hay in the summertime. And thank God I didn't have to move pipe any longer. That was a good thing, or buck hay either. But anyway, finished up high school, moved to Boise to go to college, started college living in a nursing home there. Boise Samaritan Village is what it was called back then. I don't know. It's over in the Collister Shopping Center. I don't know what they call it today, but anyway, I lived there for about 9 months, finally escaped the nursing home and got into my own place. Finished up college with a bachelor's in social work, moved to Burley, Idaho, went to work as a social worker, doing child protection and youth rehabilitation. I did that for 3 years. Then I moved to Twin Falls and worked as a social worker in the adult protection program and what was called WIN back then. It was Work Incentives Now. It was a program that worked with mothers with dependent children on welfare, helping them get back to work. That was really a rewarding job. I liked that work a lot. I also liked the juvenile probations. That was really interesting work too. Child protection, not so much. Then I got a scholarship to go to Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa. So I went there for a year and got my graduate degree in counseling. And before I left there, I was doing some disability advocacy on the side when I lived in Burley and in Twin Falls, and I became a member of the DD Council. And I was finishing up my graduate work in Des Moines at Drake, and the DD Council was trying to recruit me back to Idaho, and I had an internship set up in Washington, D.C., and I really wanted to go to D.C. So I turned them down a couple of times, and the pot kept getting a little sweeter, and I finally ended up agreeing to go back to Idaho and go to work for the DD Council. And I was working on a what they called the 1990 report, where we were supposed to be looking at all of the state and federally funded programs and doing a report on how well they were serving people. And so I started on that. One of my trips around the state to interview people and stuff took me to what was then called Stepping Stones, which was one of the centers for independent living. Roger Howard actually worked there. That's where I met Roger.
Hey, we know that guy at Link.
And then Jean Ann Whitmer was working at the DD Council, and I knew her from when I was on the DD Council as a member. And Jean Ann had actually ran the center in Pocatello, which was then called CRIP. It was stood for Center of Resources for Independent People. And while I was working at the DD Council, the Commission for the Blind got the grant to start up Link. And so Jean Ann twisted my arm and made me apply. And so I applied and got the job. And then I called Roger, said, you got to come work for me. So Roger came down and started working at Link. And Jean Ann then applied for a job at Link and started working at Link. And Roger and Jean Ann taught me what independent living was really about, because I didn't really have any clue. I mean, I had a social work background and was really kind of into taking care of people. And so Jean Ann and Roger taught me what independent living was really about. And we started building up Link. When I started at Link, I was working out of my house, which was weird back then. Right now it's like commonplace, but back then it was weird to be working from your house, until I found office space. And we built it from the ground up. We didn't have computers, no staff, no policies, no nothing. And so I worked at Link as the director for about 6 years. And at the same time, we were doing work on state legislation and doing work on national legislation, and had done some work on the Rehab Act amendments, especially the 92 amendments, which really sort of empowered the state independent living councils. Before that, they were simply advisory in nature. They were run by VR. The governor didn't do the appointments as they do now. So all those were changes of the 92 amendments, which also required that centers get their funding directly. Prior to that, we had to get our money from the Commission for the Blind. So those 92 amendments really changed stuff. And we were trying to form the State Independent Living Council in Idaho to be like a good independent living council, like a model one, not just sort of like let it go. And so I was very involved in the State Independent Living Council and ended up going to work there. Again, as the first director, right? And so, and prior to that, I was the chair of the council, appointed by Governor Andrus. And there's a son of a funny story behind that. VR called us all together and said, well, nothing really changed. And we'll still do appointments to the council, and you'll still like be an advisory in nature. So I went to Governor Andrus and said, you know, VR is trying to usurp your authority. Like they're trying to do appointments when the law clearly gives that to you. And he called up the VR director. I got on the phone and called up the VR director and told him to cease and desist from doing any more work with the silk. And so that was sort of a watershed moment. So anyway,
Yeah.
I then went to work at the silk as the executive director, and did that for 15 years actually. And then I moved to DC in 2009 to take the director position here. I had been the vice president of Nickel on the board for 4 years, and then was elected president for 4. And then the executive director was leaving, and I didn't really want to come to DC. I was actually getting kind of close to where I could retire from the state, and it would take me twice as long to retire if I came here, but they ended up talking me into it, and I came back. And I was also thinking at the same time, like, well, I'll always wonder, right? If I don't go do this, I'll always wonder what it would have been like. So I ended up coming back here. It's been quite a ride.
Yeah.
I've been here now for 12. So I've been in independent living for 30 some years, I guess.
Wow. Wow. And I know Jen has one real, like, she's been alongside you in some of this. You're bringing out some of these really cool names. Governor Andrus, like I remember that time, you know, as an Idaho native. And so, but I do just have one quick question before Jen gets to her question, Kelly. So July 26th, you mentioned that as the day of your accident and when that happened. And that was the day the ADA was passed too. Am I right? Is that a memorable date in my brain in 1980, right? July 26th.
Exactly 90. So 20 years exactly to the day from when I broke my neck. So it was 1990, July 26, 1990.
So before you broke your neck, did you want to be in DC as a disability advocate?
No, in fact, I probably would have still been a potato farmer and a cattle rancher. I mean, honestly, what really changed my whole, I mean, breaking my neck changed my whole life, right? But what changed my whole direction was when I went through rehab and I saw all these people employed in these professions that were helping people, right? I didn't even know those kind of jobs existed. I mean, I knew about firemen and policemen and that kind of stuff, but I didn't really know about nursing and social work and all that. I was used to farming and stuff like that. So when I saw people making a living helping other people, I was like, wow, you can get paid to do that? That's pretty cool. So that's really what kind of took me off on a whole new direction, which is why I became a social worker.
Wow, Kelly, I didn't realize I had forgotten that social work piece of your background, and I didn't realize you had such a connection to families and children, which then leads to the the topic I wanted to bring up, which was the legislation you helped get passed when you were still here at the Silk, protecting parents and families where the parent is the person with the disability. Can you tell us more about that protection and what that is? And because I don't think a lot of people know.
Yeah, so when I was the director at the Silk, we, as you guys know, I mean, the Silk writes the state plan, right? And we did that in partnership with the centers. And so we would go around the state and hold public forums to get input from people. And we would do it at a different center each time. So we did like 3 public forums before we wrote the state plan, or no, 4. We did 4 public forums before we wrote the state plan. So like North Idaho, like Coeur d'Alene, Moscow, and then Boise, Pocatello. I think that was the ones we held. And then we would do 3 more public hearings after the plan was written to sort of get input. Like the first round of public forums was to get, what do you guys think should change in Idaho for people to live more independently? And then the second round was, okay, here's the plan we wrote based upon your input. What do you think? And get comments back from people. So we did those public forums, and in that, one of the comments that was made was that parents with disabilities lose their children because of their disability, right? They can't be a parent. And we should do something about that. And at the beginning, I thought, well, yeah, I mean, really, do that many people really lose their kids? And is this more of a solution seeking a problem or what? But we looked into it and we ended up putting it in the plan to investigate it. And what we found was, yeah, it's a pretty big problem. So we started holding meetings. We got a coalition together and of all the disability organizations, and we did some organizations that were involved in parenting too, including health and welfare and child protection. We even had the Supreme Court show up to some of the meetings. And what we started doing was we went through all of the child custody laws in Idaho And we found language in the code that was discriminatory against parents with disabilities. And then we added language, we took that language out and we added in language that protected the rights of parents with disabilities. Sort of like stole a bunch of language from the ADA and Rehab Act and that kind of stuff. And Jim Baugh was really instrumental in writing up that language, because he was an attorney. So he could take what was in the law and change it, write it. So Jim was really responsible for drafting all of this language. And we took on like child protection, termination of parental rights, adoption, guardianship, and separation and divorce. I think those were all the codes that we went through all of those and made those kind of changes. And so we introduced it in the Senate, and it, interestingly enough, the bills, all 5 of them, passed the Senate unanimously, not a single no vote. Every Democrat and every Republican voted in favor. It went to the House, to the Health and Welfare Committee, and died in committee. So we tried to fix what we thought we heard in committee, what that was wrong with the bills. And we reintroduced it in the Senate, again, passed the Senate unanimously, goes to the House Health and Welfare Committee, dies again. Mm. So again, we all got together at the table, tried to figure out, over the summers was when we worked on the language. So we got together, tried to figure out what we needed to fix. So the 3rd year, we decided, well, we'll introduce it into the House and then go to the Senate, right? And we also decided to break it up into 2 different pieces. So we put guardianship, adoption, and separation and divorce in one bill, and we put child protection and termination of parental rights into another bill. It went into the House Health and Welfare Committee and died. So we're not done yet, right? We're still like really interested in fixing this. So we're redrafting it, and we come back the following year, and it was right at the beginning of the session, the chairman of the House Health and Welfare Committee called me up and said, "Have you seen the movie I Am Sam? Are you guys familiar with what I'm talking about?"
Yep.
So it's a movie about child custody for a guy who is developmentally disabled, and his wife ends up getting custody of the kid. So anyway, the chairman of the House Health and Welfare Committee asked me if I'd seen it. I said, no, I haven't seen it. And he said, well, I'm taking my committee to watch it. I'd like you to come. So he took his entire committee plus me to the movies to watch the show, right? So we had real parents testifying about real life experiences about having their children taken away because of their disability and no other reason. Not that they were not loving parents or abusive or neglectful, but this movie changed everybody's mind, right? Like, so they all come up to me afterward and said, I'm voting for the bill. I'm not kidding you. Like, so we go into committee and the bills shoot through committee and pass on the floor. This is the divorce and separation and guardianship and adoption. Those all go through the House, through the Senate, and they're done. So the next year we're working. Oh, and by the way, I had a child during this whole process. So, I mean, I wasn't even thinking about being a father when I started all of this in the public forums and stuff. But in the meantime, my wife gets pregnant. We have a son, and I think he's 3 by the time that the governor signs the bills. But anyway, so the next year we go into a child protection and termination of parental rights. And there's some issues with it. There's a little disagreement about some of the language. And so it goes to the floor with amendments. And the amendments are up for a vote. And the House sponsor, which we got, was named Bill Sally. He was the one who wanted to amend it, and we weren't really in favor of the amendments. But the speaker actually, I was in the gallery watching the debate, and the speaker actually came up and asked me if we were in favor of the amendments, and I said, no, we're not. And so the amendments died.
Well, there you go.
Some really fun stories around this kind of stuff with these bills. You were gonna ask something?
Absolutely, Kelly. And well, I actually have that it's 12:26. So viewers have gotten some bonus time with our friend Kelly. And I think, I will just end and wrap up with one more comment and appreciation for you, Mr. Buckland. We've started this Education to Action series because at Link, our founders and also those who continue, we are committed to this education to access because we believe the future of inclusive government and politics where decisions about our communities are made by our communities. And I think you have just, even the work that you did before it was relevant to you, before your son, and then you had your son, it really is a testimony to the impact of potato farmer from Idaho, and I only say that with loving and enduring as an Idaho native, can really do. So I challenge you viewers to take Kelly's stories as an inspiration. And when you do get those no's or get that obstacle or that barrier that comes up, work around it, build your community, organize your community. You can start with a Center for Independent Living. Locally, we have 3 of them, but really it's the people who step up to make the change. So Kelly, do you have any 30-second last minute say goodbye to the viewers before we say ciao?
Well, just to wrap this up quick, after all that happened, when I came back to DC, I went to NCD, the National Council on Disability, and said, we really need a national fix. It shouldn't depend on what state you live in, whether your rights are guaranteed as a parent or not. That should be across the country. And so NCD did a report called Rocking the Cradle, and you should read it if you get a chance, because it's really well done. And then secondly, it holds Idaho up as the gold standard in regards to protecting the rights of parents with disabilities. So I should be proud of that. But with that, I'll just say thank you for having me. I mean, it's always, like I said at the beginning, it's always a pleasure to talk with my friends in Idaho, and come back anytime you ask me to. So.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to that, Kelly. And thank you all for tuning in. For now, Jen and I and Kelly and Sierra say ciao for now. Thanks, everyone.